Hello, 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 and welcome to the ninth episode of Mixed Media Reviews Season 3. My name is Kelsey, and today I'm going to be talking about a movie. This week's movie is Vampire Academy. Like I said in the last episode where I talked about the Vampire Academy TV show, which was, a million years ago, I knew about the books, but I never read them. And I had seen that the movie existed as it had been on Netflix for a bit and kept popping up in my recommendations because, Netflix gets me. But I had never watched the movie. So I finally decided to watch it after I watched the show. From Google, the movie summary is as follows. Teenager Rose Hathaway is a Dhampir, a human-vampire hybrid. Her best friend is Lissa Dragomir, a princess of the Mori, mortal, peaceful vampires. Both teens attend St. Vladimir's Academy, a secret haven for those like them. Rose trains with a handsome mentor to guarantee her place as Lissa's guardian, although she may have to sacrifice everything to protect Lissa from enemies both within St. Vladimir's walls and outside them. So this movie was fine. And by fine, I mean fine. It was definitely a movie. And if you want to have some, guilty pleasure kind of garbage to put on to do nothing to, and for some reason you don't have access to Twilight, then yeah, this is a great movie for that. Like, if you specifically want to put on a vampire teen romance movie that's not great and also based on a book, and you don't have the ability to throw on Twilight, then yeah, this is a great option. I guess you could say it's a fun, campy, and definitely teen movie from 2014. It does kind of follow the book more so than the show in the events that happen. And yeah, that's it. That's all I liked about it. And I don't even know if you could say what I've said qualifies as liking about it. I had to go to Tumblr afterwards to find out how the movie was made from the same material as the show. And it was pointed out to me that the Vampire Academy movie had the same, I think, director as Mean Girls. So it was kind of like a little bit more satirical in a way. So even though we got a lot of the, similar events that happened in the books, it in no way reflected the tone of them. I'll talk a little bit more about the differences between the show, book, and movie in the next episode when I dive into the books. But I mean, I guess, yeah, it wasn't supposed to be like a straight adaptation, I guess, and that's why it's so freaking different. And I guess you can determine if that's something that you liked about it or didn't. There was a lot that I didn't like about the movie. It felt like it was all very superficial. If we take that as face value, that, that it was meant to be almost parody-like, then I guess that makes sense. Like, they took the events of the first book, but they didn't try to go any further than knowing the plot points that they had to hit. There was no meaning behind anything, and it didn't really try to create, like, a cohesive story, I felt, if that makes sense. Because they weren't trying to do maybe a real movie, it very much came off like a sequence of events that they just pulled randomly from the book without actually understanding the context behind anything. All of the writing, the characters, the acting was so flat. Like, there was zero chemistry between any of the characters, whether they're supposed to be friends or more. It was all very, very cringy. The guy who played Dimitri was probably the worst, sorry to say, but he was so flat and monotone. Like, I get he's, supposed to be like this stoic guy, but the show was able to have him stoic while still having some kind of emotion. And, the show was a very charming Dimitri, even though he was, like the sultry kind of broody type. But he was still super charming, and yet in the show, or in the movie, In the movie, none of that happens. The shows Rose and Dimitri like oozed chemistry in literally everything that they did, but the movies Rose and Dimitri was just really uncomfortable to watch. And while the show kind of fixed the age gap between the two, the movie kept it, and that was really weird. And I know that he has a ponytail in the book, but that was not an attractive haircut or style on this guy. It very much looked like a wig, like it was very stiff. It was very weird. I was not a fan at all. And okay, so this is kind of like a side note, but I really hate teachers who read notes out loud. Like, what is wrong with people? That's really messed up of them to do that, and especially this one. Again, I had not read the books at this point, so I, hadn't heard that scene yet because it wasn't in the TV show. But in the movie, they have the scene where, the kids are passing the notes, and then the teacher reads it out loud. And like, what is wrong with teachers that they think that it's okay that they're passing it in class, so they read it out loud, like as a way to, I guess, embarrass the student? It's not cool. And especially in this case where they keep reading, which even though it's literally about somebody else who wasn't even part of the note passing, so now they're punishing some other student who had no part in it. And it angered me a lot. And then Christian gets in trouble, but the dudes who are demeaning Rose and Lissa don't get in trouble, which I guess isn't really a critique on the movie itself, but it's still kind of, I guess, maybe a critique of the writing, because it was really annoying and I hated it. So I'm going to keep it in this section, and I don't even care, because honestly, just every aspect of this movie was terrible, really. I mean, that weird speech at the end that Lissa gives was so cringy. Like, I don't even understand what it was doing. And then, the whole everyone claps thing happens. I feel like I'm not making a lot of sense, because I wrote a lot of these down after watching it and was just thinking, ugh, this, and then, oh God, this scene, and it was just like constant, because the movie wasn't like this cohesive, story that I'm trying to critique and adjust. It was more just the series of events that happened, and I hated every single series of events that happened. It just wasn't well put together, much like this episode. But then again, I'm not getting paid to write movies. I get that this movie is closer in events with the books, although I have my own issues with the books, but they just, after watching the TV show, which I genuinely loved, I don't know why this movie was made. And I think a lot of the critiques that I have for the movie also kind of stem from the books, since that's, it follows so closely with the books, and trust me, I have plenty of thoughts about it. But it could have been so much more, but because they kind of limited themselves to, I guess, maybe a parody-like or satirical-like kind of perspective for this movie, they didn't fix any of the problems, and they exacerbated them by making them so shallow and not at all have any depth to anything that happens. Like, they could have, I think this movie could have been saved if they did add a little bit more depth to the characters, to the scenes, if they provided a bit more context, instead of, because it's a movie, instead of just relying on that first book, kind of pull a bit more context from the other books and set a bit more of a tone that matched the books, instead of just trying to give us this cheesiness, because it didn't work as a satirical type of movie. It did not for sure work as a movie that was supposed to be taken seriously. I think they tried to kind of straddle the two versions of itself, and they just didn't hit the mark on either side, because they both failed. Both versions failed. And instead of making a movie that could have been either really dive into that satirical genre, like the vampire books Crave are supposed to have done, or take it at face value and make it a very serious teenage vampire movie. But they did neither, and I think that's why it really failed, because it didn't fit either category, and it just felt like it was a crappy version of a straight vampire movie, If you really love the Vampire Academy books, then I don't recommend the movie. But if you love the TV show, I kind of also don't recommend the movie. But if you haven't read or watched either, I actually still don't think I recommend the movie. If you're just looking for a vampire movie to throw on in the background, I actually still recommend Twilight, because it's a classic and it's great. It may actually have a lot of the similar problems with chemistry and, awkwardness and cringe that this movie has, but it does it in a better way because it's Twilight, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I guess you can watch this movie if you want to have a cringe fest and, need some recommendations to just make you feel real uncomfortable watching a movie. Then you can check it out. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Vampire Academy. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Tumblr at Mixed Media Reviews Podcast. Please leave me a comment to let me know if you agreed, disagreed, or if you have any suggestions on what's to come. You can find me anywhere you find your podcasts, probably. Please join me next time, where I'm going to be reviewing the first book in the Vampire Academy series. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye!